The whispers started the moment he walked in. Too old. Too plain. Too ordinary. I watched from across the restaurant as Emma's friends exchanged glances, poorly hiding their snickers behind manicured hands. Little did they know that night would change everything, not just for Emma, but for all of us who witnessed what happened next. If you think this is just another romance story, wait until you see what this man pulls from his pocket that silences an entire restaurant. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end. Emma Matthews sat nervously at the corner table, smoothing her navy dress for the 5th time. At 32, she'd been through enough blind dates to keep her expectations firmly grounded. Her friends had insisted this one would be different, but when Daniel Parker walked in, 10 minutes late, wearing a slightly rumpled suit, and looking nothing like the polished businessman her friends usually set her up with, she felt her heart sink. "Emma?" he asked, his voice unexpectedly warm. "I'm so sorry I'm late. My daughter's babysitter had car trouble." Emma nodded politely, trying to ignore the table of her coworkers who had, coincidentally, planned their girls' night at the same restaurant. She could hear their whispered comments. "That's her date? Seriously? I thought Melissa said he was successful." Poor Emma, always the charity case. What Emma didn't know was that Daniel had heard them too. His eyes briefly flickered toward their table before returning to her with a gentle smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Should we order?" he asked, seemingly unfazed. The dinner started awkwardly. Daniel spoke softly about his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, while Emma shared stories about her work as an elementary school art teacher. She found herself warming to him despite her initial disappointment. There was something genuine about the way he listened, really listened, when she spoke. Then came the moment that would later be replayed in Emma's mind 1,000 times. Her friend Melissa sauntered over, champagne glass in hand. "Emma! What a coincidence," she exclaimed with theatrical surprise. "We were just wondering how your date was going." Her eyes slid dismissively over Daniel. Before Emma could respond, another friend joined them. "We were about to order dessert. Why don't you both join us?" The invitation was clearly meant only for Emma. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that will warm your heart and restore your faith in humanity. Because what happens next changed everyone in that restaurant forever. Daniel stood up, and for a moment, Emma thought he was going to leave. Instead, he extended his hand to Melissa with a smile. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Daniel Parker." Melissa's smile faltered slightly. "Parker? As in Parker Industries?" The table of friends suddenly went quiet. Emma looked between them, confused. "The same," Daniel said simply, without elaboration. He turned back to Emma. "Would you excuse me for a moment? I need to make a quick call to check on Lily." As he walked away, Melissa grabbed Emma's arm. "Do you have any idea who he is?" "Daniel Parker is the CEO of Parker Industries. They're worth billions. Why didn't you tell us?" Emma stared after Daniel's retreating figure. "I didn't know." What Emma also didn't know was that Daniel had been widowed 3 years earlier when his wife died of cancer, leaving him to raise their daughter alone. Despite his wealth and status, he'd struggled to find someone who saw him as more than a prospective bank account. His assistant had suggested the blind date after meeting Emma at a charity event for children's art programs. When Daniel returned to the table, the atmosphere had shifted. Emma's friends hovered nearby, suddenly interested in their conversation. But Daniel only had eyes for Emma, who was now looking at him differently, with uncertainty and a hint of betrayal. "You didn't mention you were, well, famous," she said quietly. Daniel's face fell. "Does it matter?" "It matters that you weren't honest. I wanted one night where someone got to know me, not my company or my bank account." His voice was soft but firm. "When was I supposed to mention it?" "Hi, I'm Daniel, I run a Fortune 500 company, but please treat me normally." Emma felt her cheeks flush with shame. He was right. Hadn't she just spent the evening enjoying his company precisely because he seemed normal, kind, and unpretentious? The weeks that followed transformed Emma's life in ways she never expected. Daniel invited her to casual dinners at his home, where she met Lily, a precocious, artistic child who immediately took to Emma's warm teaching style. They spent weekends at parks, museums, and once at Daniel's surprisingly modest lake house, where corporate titles meant nothing and sandcastles meant everything. 2 months into their relationship, Emma realized she was falling in love not with Daniel Parker, CEO, but with Daniel, the man who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character, who burned pancakes on Sunday mornings, and who looked at her like she was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. But shadows from the past haunted them both. Emma's previous relationship had ended when her fiancé left her for someone more ambitious, leaving her with insecurities about being enough. Daniel carried the weight of his wife's memory and the fear of opening his heart again. Their first major argument came when Emma overheard Daniel's mother telling a friend that while Emma was sweet, she wasn't exactly what the family had envisioned for Daniel's second wife. "She's just a teacher, after all," his mother had said, unaware that Emma was within earshot. When confronted, Daniel defended Emma passionately but admitted his family had expectations. The word hung between them like a wall. "I'm never going to fit into your world," Emma said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't belong there." "You belong with me," Daniel insisted. "With me and Lily. The rest doesn't matter." But it did matter. The whispers followed them everywhere, at charity galas, at school functions, even at the grocery store. Gold digger, some called her. Midlife crisis, others said of him. The pressure mounted until Emma suggested they take a break. "I need to know if what I feel for you is real or if I'm just caught up in the fantasy," she explained, breaking both their hearts. For 3 weeks, they didn't speak. Emma threw herself into her work, preparing for her school's annual art exhibition. Daniel respected her wishes but sent a single white lily, Lily's namesake flower, to her apartment each day. The night of the exhibition arrived. Emma's students had created beautiful pieces around the theme, "What Makes a Family?" As she guided parents through the displays, she spotted a familiar figure at the back of the room, Daniel, holding Lily's hand. The little girl broke free and ran to Emma, wrapping her arms around her waist. "We miss you," Lily whispered. "Daddy doesn't smile anymore. If you're still with me, you won't believe what happens next. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our stories that prove love can overcome any obstacle." Emma looked up to find Daniel watching them, his eyes filled with an emotion that took her breath away. He walked toward them slowly, and the crowded room seemed to fade away. "I tried to stay away," he said quietly. "I tried to give you the space you asked for. But Lily's right, nothing feels right without you." Emma felt tears forming. "Daniel, Please, let me finish." He took her hands in his. "These past weeks made me realize something. I've been hiding behind my work, behind my responsibilities, afraid to fully live again after losing Sarah. But you changed that. You made me want to build a future again." By now, the room had gone quiet. Parents, teachers, and students watched as Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gasps echoed through the room. Emma's colleagues, including those who had laughed at Daniel that first night, stood frozen, champagne glasses halfway to their lips. "I'm not asking you this because of some timeline or because it's expected," Daniel continued, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I'm asking because I love you, Emma Matthews. I love how you see beauty in everything, how you've brought color back into our lives, how you've taught me that family isn't about where you come from but who you choose." He opened the box, revealing not a diamond ring as everyone expected, but a simple band of twisted gold with tiny paintbrushes engraved around it. "This isn't just from me," he said. "It's from both of us." Lily stepped forward, holding a handmade card covered in glitter and childish drawings of 3 stick figures holding hands. "Will you be part of our family?" Daniel asked. Not as Daniel Parker's wife or Lily's stepmother, but as Emma, exactly the person you are, who we love exactly as you are. The silence in the room was deafening. Emma's friends, who had once laughed at her blind date, now watched with tears in their eyes. Her students whispered excitedly. Her principal stood slack-jawed beside the punch bowl. Emma looked at the ring, at Lily's hopeful face, at Daniel kneeling before her, not as a powerful CEO but as a man offering his heart. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." The room erupted in cheers as Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger and Lily launched herself into their embrace. In that moment, surrounded by art created by children who understood that families come in all forms, Emma realized that sometimes the most beautiful masterpieces are the ones we create together. Their wedding 6 months later was intimate and unconventional. Held in the school's art room, decorated with student artwork, it featured Lily as both flower girl and best daughter. Daniel's corporate board sat alongside Emma's teaching colleagues, and his mother, who had come to adore Emma's authentic spirit, helped serve cake. 5 years later, Emma and Daniel welcomed twins who grew up knowing that their family's story began with laughter that turned to silence, with judgment that transformed into respect, and with the courage to see beyond appearances to the heart beneath. As for those friends who had laughed that first night, they were in the front row at the wedding, having learned perhaps the most important lesson of all: never judge a book by its cover, or a CEO by his rumpled suit. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more content that reminds us all that love finds us in the most unexpected places, and sometimes, the person everyone underestimates turns out to be exactly who we need. Because in the end, it's not about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who sees your imperfections and loves you anyway.